Alright, what I want to look at here is what I call girl on a swing. There's a good question we'll do in a little while, well, in a few more sessions on girl on a swing, but for now let's just treat it as if it's a pendulum. So that girl, that mass there, could be the girl sitting on the swing, and as usual the pendulum's just going to pass through its normal motion. Now we all know that the loss of height is going to be converted into more kinetic energy at this point here. So let's just have a look at the forces at this extreme point where her velocity is 0. So if you look at that point there, we've got her normal weight force equals mg. Now if we actually look at those vectors, and of course we've got the tension and whatever's holding the string, at that point, if we look at the vectors, we've got the mg and we've got a tension force, and the tension force component of the tension force balances out that component of the weight force that's in that direction, and that leaves a net force like this. So at the extreme point of the pendulum, you actually have a weight force that isn't horizontal. You have a net force that isn't horizontal. You have a net force pointing down like that. As we come down, which is maybe the midpoint, we've lost a little bit of height and we've got some velocity. We now need a little bit more tension because the force needs to be greater to give us that centripetal acceleration. So if that was position A, that's the force diagram for A. If this is position B, then the force diagram for B, we've got the same old weight force as usual. Our tension force at this stage may have increased to the point that we now have a net force going towards the equilibrium point or towards the middle, and it's that net force which is now supplying the centripetal acceleration. Notice though that the net force has gone from pointing down, a little bit down, to horizontal. As we get down to say position C, what we're going to get is again weight force, increased tension force needed, and we're actually going to be getting a net vector pointing slightly up. So that when we get to position D, the center, I think you're getting the idea. We're going to have a weight force straight down. The tension force can only go up. There's going to be an extra amount of that tension force to supply mv squared over r, or centripetal force. So if we were to ask ourselves, what is the reading going to be on a set of scales? So if we actually had a girl sitting on a swing here, arms sitting on the swing, and we put a bit of scales there, so if that was the scales, what would they read? That's one of the questions that you could be asked. And what you're going to do is, normally you'd know that the scales are going to read her weight force. So if she was 60 kgs and we were using G equals 10, they would read 600 newtons. But if she's now moving, so there's an upwards force of 600 newtons, but if she's moving at say 2 meters per second, it's quite fast, then her centripetal force needs to be mv squared over r. Now her mass was 60 kgs times 4 all over the radius, whatever that is. So if the radius was, I don't know, 2 meters, so it was 2 meters, then we end up with needing 120 newtons. So that would be 120. So now we need 720 newtons of tension for this situation. 600 newtons just to balance out the weight force, and an extra 120. So the scales would read 72 kgs. And that's what I wanted to show you.